Well, it is football season, y'all, and it's time for Football Friends. The Musers, the podcast Cowboys edition. It's Football Friends. It's George Dunham and Bob Sturm, two very good football friends who've now been separated from talking football for several months, Bob. And I can't tell you how much I have missed you, and I can't tell you how much I have missed football. No offense to your game of quote-unquote football, but I'm not a soccer fan. I'm not a women's basketball or youth softball fan, and I've been getting that jammed down my throat for the last month. I'm ready for a game where they put on helmets and they knock the crap out of one another, and we get this thing going.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and we may part ways when it comes to the World Cup or things of that nature, but that's okay. We all go our separate ways for the summer, but you can sense it, you can feel it, you can smell the fresh cut grass, and just kind of get a feel for what Football Friends is all about. And man, this podcast, it didn't even exist 12 months ago. And now Football Friends, I was eager to make sure that we got one dropped in the month of July, because that's when football drops, and you know, just the road ahead. I do like us getting together to chat about it at great length and be on the entire journey. So I think last year we might have even started like week 1, but heck with that. We need to be there way before week 1.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The season basically started this week with the Cowboys reporting to Oxnard. We've got some sound from training camp, and you and I are going to be there here in just a couple of days. And we'll talk about expectations. And Bob, as you know, this is a long-time Cowboys tradition. Along this time, July, August, early September, we start talking ourselves into, okay, well, he may be better this year. And what if this happens? Yeah, this could happen, but it hasn't happened for this team in 30 years. Frustration is at an all-time high. There's no doubt about that. But there is hope this year, and you and I talked about it at length last year. We're both big Brian Schottenheimer fans.
Yeah.
But there was a major problem with this team last year on the defensive side of the ball, and we talked about it week after week. It's an overhaul of epic proportions on that side of the ball. We're going to talk a lot about that today, and let's just jump right into it with how camp opened as it opens every year. And would you agree this is Jerry's favorite day of the year, the day he welcomes the media to training camp. They hadn't lost a game yet, and everything's fine.
Yeah, no, he loves this with all of his heart. He loves being the main character. We know that. And I think you and I have a similar visceral reaction to this day, because if I were to set the off season in its place, I would say, at first, we sort of need a vacation. We need to decompress from Cowboy season and the carnage and the disappointments and the eye rolls. And then as the draft, brings us back, and then we get our little, time with our boat or whatever, and then so now we're at the spot where, and I think you and I get accused of this all the time, which is odd, given that I actually have a tattoo of a different NFL team's logo on my body, but we both get accused at our radio station of being the two most likely sucked in by the optimism of a new season, and like hope springs eternal, and yes, you and I both will see the glass half full and the ceiling possibilities, whereas so many of our colleagues will see the glass half empty, and they will see the potential floor and the firings and the rebuilds and just all the things that go with that. So you and I are football friends for a reason. We share this in common: optimism, hope, whatever you want to call it. And then it sort of gets kicked right in the groin when we have to do the State of the Cowboys address, because we then realize, even though we know it, that the same guy is kind of in charge of the whole circus.
I know. And each year is a different set of circumstances. That is a fact. So if you're being fair about it, you should say, okay, well, let's evaluate it based on this year's story.
Yeah.
But you're right. That guy is still there. The same guy that bought this team in 1989. I thought it was the craziest thing that I'd ever seen. I was there that night when he said, I'm going to be a part of the Sox and Jocks, and it's all about winning. But I did carry that with me from Jerry Jones' opening press conference. It's all about winning. Okay, so this guy seems crazy. But then within a few years, he's got 3 Super Bowls under his belt.
Right.
And he hasn't had one since, and we all know the reasons why. There's a million of them, and in every coaching staff and every decade has its story, but they all kind of point back to this one dude. And here is the difference between his approach to running a football team, Jerry Jones' approach. We'll hear his first, and then the guy who's really ultimately in charge of football operations, and that's the head coach, Brian Schottenheimer. But in the opening press conference, we got this from Jerry, which says all you need to know about what he really cares about and what really juices him.
I've never thought that there was anything quiet or subdued about the Dallas Cowboys. I'd never thought of it that way. But I have been guilty of stirring it up. And you guys help me. And we have been a great team. I promise you that for the last 30-something years. And so that does happen, and it is good. I don't believe it makes one iota worth of difference on whether or not we block the guy or go off tackle. But I do like the perception that we've had a quiet, uneventful off season, and let's see how we can work in that. Perception is big. Perception is big. But what I will tell you is I don't plan on doing anything around here for the next few days to stir anything up.
Okay, well, we'll hold him to that, and we'll see about that. And then
Except
the next breath, he's talking about Max
going.
Crosby. So,
Yeah.
I don't know about that. And that is Jerry right there about the wink towards the media and, hey, we make a great team, don't we? I'll throw something out. You guys make a big deal about it. And, on the field, this is why people hate the Cowboys. Today, there were Cowboy headlines in newspapers nationwide and on ESPN, and nobody else gets that kind of ink. Nobody else gets that kind of celebration, and the brand is still big. But, man, I can understand, not just with Cowboy fans, the growing frustration, but around the country of, why do y'all get talked about so much? Y'all suck.
Right. Yeah, it's one of the greatest mysteries about this franchise is the role the media plays in it. And I even mean the local media. And, I understand we all work for bosses. And so it's not like a complete elective decision that everybody could make on their own. But the amount of gravity and the amount of credence we do give every time Jerry Jones opens his mouth is part of the issue. And my biggest sensitive spot on this is the post-game stuff, where often at the exact same moment your head coach is talking. He did this with McCarthy a ton, almost to make you think it was by design, that when McCarthy is going to the post-game podium, Jerry is camped out, posted up in the Cowboys locker room or right outside it, doing his own version of the post game. And, if you want to define why the circus is the circus, I would start there, because there's absolutely no reason for an owner or even a general manager to give his thoughts on a game that he did not participate in. Right. And it's just nonsense. Now, if you want to meet every Tuesday or every Thursday to give the general manager's state of affairs, that's fine. But to do it not only on the same day, but at the same moment as your head coach, it obviously does what you hope it will do, which is make you the main character of a story in which you're actually not that entitled to be the main character in. It's the head coach, or it's the quarterback, or it's the main players on the team. So, he's right. If we don't give that love, then maybe it no longer has traction or meaning. And I mean, each reporter has to decide, where am I going to be and what am I going to include in my story? And I've seen reporter after reporter, by their actions, start their post-game stories in their publications with quotes from Jerry Jones. And so, yeah, we're part of the problem. I don't think we are, because I don't think you or I are part of that machine. But I guess here we are talking about it. So maybe in an indirect way we sort of are. But it's just bizarre. Right down to the point where Corby asked me on the show, how normal is this around the league? And you have to play is it like an owner starting his training camp with a long press conference, or a general manager? And I think in both cases, it's abnormal. The main character would be the head coach, but it's been normalized here for so many decades that when Jerry is gone, nobody will know how to start training camp anymore, because we'll be in this tradition set by Jerry himself that this is actually, guys, how a training camp is supposed to open. It's our custom.
Well, and you're right about how we, the media, play into it. Opening press conference, it's 13 and a half minutes before Brian Schottenheimer gets to say anything. Because the questions, they just open it up with questions, and they're all to Jerry and Steven. So in steps Brian Schottenheimer, the son of a legend in the NFL. And I feel for him, but I'll say this about Schotty, and you and I are Schotty fans.
Yeah.
He went 7-9-1 last year. Remember the tie, Bob? That was against the Packers.
Yeah, I do. 40-40. I think a scoregami.
Crazy game. What an insane game that was. And so, based on that, it's like, okay, yeah, he talked all this noise, and then he goes 7-9-1. Well, he also played with one side of the ball last year. It was the worst defense, given all the parameters in franchise history. So Schotty hears all this talk for 15 minutes about, hey, Jerry, this has been kind of a quiet offseason. What are your thoughts? Yeah. Hey, Jerry, nothing really going on with this team. Is that a good thing? And hey, Jerry, you don't have anybody that's on the PUP list to start this training camp, maybe for the first time ever since you own the team. Is that weird? And
right.
And then so it's time for Schottenheimer to talk, and I loved what he said.
The amount of hours that went into identifying the strengths of Christian Parker, Chidera, Derek Ansley, these guys, I mean, it was tireless. And so that's why I laugh about it was a quiet offseason. It was on the outside, maybe with storylines, but for us, we worked our asses off, and I'm excited to finally see it all come out into real football.
I love that.
Yep.
Hey, all I know is we just totally stripped our defense down in coaching staff and personnel. We've added players. We've traded for players. We drafted players. We've got a new defensive coordinator who many outside this organization think may be one of the brightest young defensive minds in the league, and he stacked his staff with some really interesting young coaches. One quiet for me. I've been working my tail off, and that's what matters most is football. But with life with the Dallas Cowboys, it's so much more than just football. I love that at least Schotty tries to get the spotlight on the main thing and why we're here.
Yeah, he's like, guys, I've hardly seen the sun. I've been doing so much film study and so much designing for this team. So, that's what you need. I really like Schotty. Now, obviously, if we're sitting here next year and we have a third, and I know the first one wasn't on him, but a third consecutive 7-win season, which is crazy. And we don't maybe talk about that enough, is that they've had back-to-back 7-win seasons. Not great.
No.
But so he needs some real positive results in year 2. But what I love about him is, to this point, I think it's impossible to suggest that the circus is bothering him. He seems, and you're right, that's crazy, 13 minutes before a head coach says peep. and that's not great from an organizational build, and I guess people would just say, well, that's that's what it is, guys, so you have to get over that, but it doesn't have to be that way, guys. I do like, though, if we're going to have a culture changer in Brian Schottenheimer, I like the fact that he doesn't seem super bothered by any of this. And so he waits his turn, then he hits his answers with energy. I've seen him on the practice field do the same thing, be the same guy. So I think it's important, if you're trying to accomplish something that's difficult to accomplish, if you stay, it's the old make the main thing the main thing. And for him, the main thing is what's on the field and how they prepare and how they build, and the Jerry power struggle, equity and control, all these types of things. I'm not saying it's not important at all, but to a head coach, once you take that job, you're not going to get them to change how they've structured this as a family business. So now control what you can control, and I think that's more and more every year. So I don't think Mike McCarthy could have got Christian Parker hired, because I don't think he had the favor of the big boss and the big family. And,
I think that's important. I think you're really onto something there, and I had that written down too, that with a question mark at the end, because I'm not sure about this. Is Schotty a Jerry charmer? Does he know how to, for lack of a better word, work Jerry?
Yeah, he does.
And Jerry even said as much at this. One of the few things I thought was an interesting point that Jerry said, when he said, well, I tell you one thing about George Pickens, as they were talking about how there's no contract drama, and he gave credit to Schotty to,
yes,
hey, working that angle of it, of it's just a business, hang in there, go do your thing. I don't know all what he said, but there was a chance that could have gone sideways, and there was a chance that we would be talking about a George Pickens hold-in right now, but we're not. And I think some credit needs to go to Schottenheimer on that.
Oh, I think a ton of it, George, and I think that's what makes Schottenheimer such a bright star in our sky. At least the football friends would say as much, because I think we've tried this in the past with Jason Garrett. But Jason Garrett is not Brian Schottenheimer, and Brian Schottenheimer is not Jason Garrett. They're similar. They're football kids. They're lifers. They're compliant to the Jones family structure. But where they're different, at least to this point, in my mind, is that Garrett, I don't want to say flew too close to the sun, but Garrett was almost too attached to the Jones family. And by doing that, and I'm not saying he was sucking up to them or anything, but I just think he naturally felt that the Jones family were his friends, and he was closer to that. Whereas I think Schottenheimer, and this can change, by the way, you got to be super careful with this. In fact, I might argue the whole Kaepernick thing is what ultimately doomed Garrett to some extent, is that you can't lose the rank and file, the middle class of your locker room, by befriending, by even doing the basketball bunch or whatever we called that back in the day, where Garrett and Romo and Witten and like that. I think it was DeMarco Murray would show up at like Duke games or wherever they would go.
Yeah, the basketball bunch,
like
not associated with football friends. They were the basketball.
No,
bunch.
It's not. But I'll tell you, that sends a message, man. When you're seen in the south of France with the Jones family in your white linens for the family picture or whatever, like that sends a message to the dudes who cover punts that you're one of them, not one of us. And I know that's really trying to understand the culture of a locker room, and that's certainly not my specialty, George. But I think the fact that you're telling me Brian Schottenheimer has a real meaningful relationship with George Pickens is a very exciting difference from what Jason Garrett and Des Bryant could ever do. Des Bryant could not stand Jason Garrett, okay? And I don't think Jason Garrett could stand Des Bryant, but they understood as part of a football situation, they had to sort of coexist.
Yeah.
Whereas I really do think George Pickens would not think it's weird to go have dinner on the patio at Schottenheimer's house.
Yeah.
And so that's tricky. You know, you got CeeDee Lamb and you got George Pickens and you had Micah Parsons, but now it's Quinnen and Dak Prescott. And a lot of these guys you would not say are necessarily the type to be buddies with a head coach. And I'm not even sure that's what I'm trying to say. It's just you have a relatable working relationship. You have empathy for what they're dealing with. And again, to go back to the Kaepernick national anthem thing, I will tell you, Jerry Jones needed a head coach to say, hey, we can do whatever you want with the anthem and so forth, but just know there's going to be a part of this team that's going to find this really weird and
Yes.
and really performative, and we should be careful not to cross that line to where Orlando Skandrick is going to be rolling his eyes if we do this. And I think Schottenheimer could do that. I don't think Jason Garrett could, and that might just be the type of guy they naturally are.
Well, and just for context, I started really his opening press conference. Maybe I read too much in the press conferences like this one that opens training camp, but I do think it at least means how do you communicate? What do you have to say? And I think that has a chance resonating with players. And I was told when he was hired, somebody who works with the organization who has told me in years past negative things about coaches, like, yeah, man, I don't know if this guy can do it. I don't like this about him. I don't like that about him. Was really high on him. And he asked me, he said, who do you consider a young or just a really good, innovative offensive coach in the NFL? And I said, well, McVay, Shanahan. And he said, yeah, perfect. He said, he is just as good as an offensive coach as those guys. Those guys haven't reinvented the game. He is really good at drawing it up, and he's been around it all of his life. And then just watching him, and I make fun of the GP and CP stuff, and hey, brother, hey, buddy.
Yeah.
But I do think that's the essence of coaching is, do you relate? Do they respect you? Do they believe in you? Do they want to go cover that punt for you?
Yeah.
Block a half second more for your quarterback? That's what coaching is, and I think he may have that.
Yeah, and again, I don't in any way want to besmirch Jason Garrett because he was extremely likable to many of us, but I think there are so many people, and boy, I think you mentioning Shanahan and McVay is very meaningful, because those guys, I think, could talk to their owner, but they could also talk to their practice squad guys in a way that's relatable and warm and personal and so forth. And I do think Schottenheimer's in that group. Whereas I do think there are other people, and maybe an Ivy League coach who seems pretty buttoned up at times, might not ever be in a spot where he's comfortable one-on-one with Des Bryant or Jay Ratliff or whoever the case may be that Garrett was. Again, I'm not sure how much this matters if you're winning, but I do think as you're building a culture and trying to get the guys in the room to make a circle, and we're going to fight for each other. We're not going to worry about how Charlotte and Jerry Jr. feel about things. We're going to, we're going to prepare as if the guys in this room are the only ones that matter, because they are. And so I think Shotty has that. This may not age well in a couple of years if they still stink, but I think it's masterfully important, which is odd, George, because I don't think it was super important when they were looking for a head coach, because I don't think Jerry knows what he would be looking for there. But I almost wonder if by accident the solution to so many Cowboys problems was actually in the building, and actually a guy that they said, hey, what about this guy? Could he be our next head coach, even though the entire league is not trying to hire him right now? And maybe this is a happy accident. And maybe the fact that we're entertaining it as a possibility of a happy accident demonstrates where we started, which is you and I are full of optimism this time of year.
Yeah, why not? Well, and there's, again, as you present facts, I think there's reason to be excited about this team.
Yes.
And let's go there next on Football Friends. So we start another Dallas Cowboys season, and it has been since the 1995-96 season, since Super Bowl 30, Bob, in Tempe.
Yes.
A Super Bowl at a college football stadium. That shows you how long ago it was since the Cowboys played, and they happened to beat the Steelers in Super Bowl 30. That's how long it's been. And
is that the last time that's happened? It's got to be. Right?
Yeah, that is in a college stadium. I think so. Yeah,
like we did a Super Bowl in Palo Alto in the early '80s, and there's a couple
49ers Dolphins, right?
Yes, 49ers Dolphins. That's very good. 38-16 if you care. But I it's a rarity for a college stadium to host a Super Bowl. I don't think South Bend or Ann Arbor is ever going to get a shot at it.
No.
I feel like we've gone past that, but I guess that demonstrates how long it's been, right?
And not even not to take anything away from Arizona State, the home of Danny White, but I mean, is Arizona State, because that's where the Cardinals played back then, and that's why they hosted the Super Bowl there.
Okay, see, I thought they had the Super Bowl there, George, because of Rattle and Hum. Of course, Bono holding the spotlight on Edge as he plays the guitar. I thought they just wanted to have a Super Bowl there to commemorate that.
That may have played into it. Yeah, never underestimate the influence of U2s. No doubt about that, especially back then in the 80s and 90s. Okay, so the last time, and the Super Bowl was mentioned several times in the opening press conference.
Yeah, mainly
by Schotting. I think he puts it in the, as we keep pumping his tires, I think he puts it in the proper perspective. Yeah, that's my goal. That's everyone's goal. I see us. I visualize us being in L.A. in February and playing for the whole enchilada. I think that's great.
No, I think it's great too. I think it's great that it's not coming from Jerry, because part of the opening press conference usually is the Jerry hype machine getting cranked up and start to say things that make us all roll our eyes. His quarterback shows up at training camp in a Super Bowl 30 T-shirt, which I'll be honest, I have to question, given how crisp and clean it looked, that it was actually made for Super Bowl 30 and not made last week.
I don't think so.
But hey, I think that says something about Dak Prescott, which I also like, and I think Dak and Schotty pair well together, and their sensibilities and probably even their barbecues where they discuss what's important to them and what they hope to accomplish together. So I like that. I wonder with Schotty if he was listening to Football Friends back at Super Bowl 60 when we were in the Bay Area. And that, I think if we go back to
what happened then,
if we go back to this story of the Cowboys at Super Bowl 61, I think an early part of the documentary has to be the impact of Football Friends 1 year earlier, and we would like to roll a little tape.
It's been a long, long time, and I have an exclusive prediction for you here, Bob.
Oh, an exclusive prediction?
Yes.
Okay. How's that different from just a normal prediction?
Well, because
you can only hear it here?
I am so afraid to say this. I've not said it on our radio show. I saved it for the Musers, the podcast Cowboys edition.
Uh-huh.
It's been 30 years since the Cowboys have gone. Next year, I think they're back.
Next year, they're going to the Super Bowl?
I'm just going to keep it between me, you, Peter, and our listeners here to the Cowboys podcast.
Super Bowl 61 will involve the Dallas Cowboys.
Unbelievable.
There you go. And I think that was even before Christian Parker, wasn't it? Or maybe he had already been made.
I would say that would be a week or two after it.
Okay, yeah, because that's February.
February 5th,
yeah,
2026, the day George told us the Cowboys are going to Super Bowl 61.
It's been a long, long time, and I have an exclusive prediction. It's been 30 years since the Cowboys have gone. Next year, I think they're back. Super Bowl 61 will involve the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay. And you know what? Here in July, I'm going to stand by that, Bob, because
I love it.
If nothing else, it is odds. Everyone at some point goes to the Super Bowl, don't they?
Right. That's right.
Just a few teams haven't. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to happen for the Cleveland Browns someday, Bob. It's going to happen for the Jacksonville Jaguars someday.
Yeah, we just have to keep playing seasons.
Just got to keep playing, and eventually. And I know they have these AI projections, and I think we joked about this a few months ago that those AI projections even have the London donut slingers winning the Super Bowl before.
Yeah,
the
Berlin
Cowboys.
Brawlers are going.
Whatever they're going to be, the London franchise. But look, it's a matter of odds. It's a matter of, I do think they've got a good head coach. And let's start with why this team is optimistic. They were really good offensively last year. I mean, really good.
Oh, yeah.
And even better when you consider they didn't play with many short fields because the defense wasn't turning teams over. And the defense was also allowing teams to pick up first down after first down after first down, robbing you of possessions. I think they had a really excellent season offensively, and I think there's even a chance for this offense to be better this year and in year two of the shoddy system. And they've acquired some interesting players that I think should help them out. And you know what? Some players do get better from year 2 to year 3 and year 3 to year 4.
Yep.
But most of my optimism comes from, I am buying into, based on what they have done with personnel that they've gotten rid of and the dudes they have drafted or traded for or signed as free agents on the defensive side of the ball and this defensive coaching staff. I think they're going to be much better on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, it can't be worse, right?
I don't think so.
We can start there. I was reviewing the realities of 2025 and might have a forthcoming essay called "Just How Bad Was the 2025 Cowboys Defense?" Because honestly, if you believe like DVOA and some of the advanced metrics we use to measure NFL accomplishment, and I guess the opposite of accomplishment, the Cowboys were not only the worst in the NFL, they were one of the worst in history. And it's amazing to me, and God rest his soul, by the way, because Monty Kiffin has since passed away, but it's amazing to me that last year's defense actually was worse than the Monty Kiffin year, which was really kind of symbolic for why did the Cowboys never win with Tony Romo. People will point to that particular season because, that was the year, of course, where they scored 48 in a game and lost. 48 in a home game and lost. And so, tough to do sometimes, but the Cowboys managed to do it. But, yeah, their scoring defense was the worst in the NFL and a franchise record. And the second worst in Cowboys history in a points per game basis, behind only the expansion team in 1960. And they allowed a league high in touchdowns, and they ranked last in opponents' points per game, of course, and yards per play. They were 31st, and red zone touchdown rate allowed was, I think, 29th. Third down defense was 32nd. And just right down the list. And so in an effort, and this is, if you wanted to categorize, and maybe we should do this on the 1-year anniversary of the Micah trade, kind of take a second look at that or a 40-second look at that, depending on how many times we've gone over it. But it seems like their motivation these last couple of years was to fix the run defense, and they went to great lengths to fix it. And we'll find out this year how well that went, now that they got a good scheme and a full year of Quinn and Williams and so forth. But in fixing their run defense, and they improved substantially. They're now like 23rd best in the league at stopping the run instead of 32nd best. So that's a massive improvement, we'd have to admit. Yeah. But in doing so, everything else fell apart. And that's the problem with getting too hyper-focused on one particular metric as the be-all, end-all. I mean, just look at how many defensive tackles they've acquired, and just look at their investment in, we are going to stop the run no matter what. Well, okay, but when Dan Quinn was here, they weren't stopping the run necessarily, but they were an awesome defense that led the league in sacks, led the league in takeaways. Are we saying a yard isn't a yard? And why are we so worked up about run defense when the name of the game is actually defense? And so, I got mixed emotions on that, but I do think we are underselling a few things, but really if you say, well, why is this team specifically better? And we were talking about this on the air yesterday, because I do think, not just you and I, but I do think anybody who loves any sports team does consider change as a positive. Like, our new recruiting class, our new coach, our new scheme, our new whatever, our new uniforms, our new building, all this, because it's new, because we haven't had pain here, this must be an improvement. And it's not necessarily always an improvement. Like going to get Kenneth Murray and Jack Sanborn to run. Jack Sanborn, that was his name, right?
Yeah.
We didn't even learn his name, George, because it was such a non-factor. And that's not even saying that when they traded for Logan Wilson, like all the linebackers that were in here last year, it's just madness. But the point is, I do think there is a 3-prong piece to the puzzle, maybe 4 if you want to add in Malachi Lawrence. But I think the 3-prong, this is why this whole thing should be way better, is yes, Christian Parker, Quinnen Williams, Caleb Downs. And that trifecta is where our hope is built. If people are wondering, why do you guys buy this? Those 3 guys are different dudes. Parker, I'm a little qualified on, George, because he's never called a defensive snap in his career. That will change in week 1.
Yeah.
But I know Quinnen Williams and I know Caleb Downs, and those 2 guys were arguably the best players in their entire draft years of anybody.
Yeah, no doubt. And all right, let's start with Christian Parker, or CP.
Yeah.
As Schotty likes to call him. We talked about him when they made the hire a few months back. He's been on a rocket ship from a guy who, 8 years ago was, I think, a quality control coach at Texas A&M. And all of a sudden, he starts getting assistant jobs in the NFL and makes this rise. Vic Fangio is a big reason why. That's who he was with most recently in Philadelphia, and they're switching to a 3-4. What they're saying and we're saying about this guy outside the Cowboys organization, bright mind, eager to learn, really a good, as we talk about again, communicator with players. You looked how last couple of years and before that in Denver, how their defensive backs played. That's what he was in charge of. And, I would say that was the worst part of the Cowboys defense. All of it was bad. Lack of pressure. They didn't stop. They got better, but they still – remember, teams wanted to just run the ball. They could against Dallas last year. But the worst part was their pass defense. Not a lot of pressure.
Yep.
So they would play zone, and holy smokes. I've never seen so many open receivers in the course of one season in Cowboys history. Can he fix all of it? No, of course not. It's the NFL. You're going to give up plays, but it's got to get dramatically better. And we'll talk about some of these other coaches who've come in here to help him, and some of these players. You mentioned the 2 best ones. Man, I just think he has the know-how to even if you took the same group as last year, I think you would see better play out of them than what you saw last year.
Yeah, and I think so much is going to come down to being on the same page, and there's a lot there, but you're going to try to go back to the Vic Fangio sort of foundation core philosophy, and the core philosophy, for as far as I can say, going back to those Denver defenses, or what's his name with the Chargers, who left Denver to become the Chargers head coach there for a couple of years. Name is eluding me, but it's the whole split safety world that the NFL, and it's kind of, when you talk about Denver and the Chargers, who have they had to deal with over the last half a decade? Well, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. So the entire evolution of that defense is kind of founded on the idea of teams going to split safeties as opposed to single high. So single high, think of Seattle cover 3. And now about 2020, after getting carved up by, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and Tyreek Hill, it moved more to split safety, to where we've got to start stopping explosive passes. We've got to keep things in front of us. And so now Fangio is like the defense that sort of figured it out. And what they do, their core philosophy is show the offense one thing pre-snap, and then execute something completely different post-snap. So that deception is kind of the sleight of hand that the entire thing is built on. Now, from there are plenty of core principles. There are fronts and framework and disguise elements with pattern matching and everything that the Eagles and Broncos and these teams have wanted to do. But it all kind of comes from split field, 3 safeties now, with Caleb Downs almost playing nickel corner, but is more of a star position, additive to the box as a defensive back, sort of Cooper DeJean. And so when you look at all these things, what you're trying to do is build uncertainty in offenses, using simulated pressures, using lighter boxes, George, where they will kind of go 4-2 or even 3-3, and then always be a nickel behind it. And what this is theoretically trying to do is to build an identity where everybody is multiple. The schemes are sort of simple and repeatable, but also not necessarily telegraphed to the offense. So I know that's a bunch of vague ideas that I threw there for like 3 straight minutes, but I do think it does fit well, especially if you were going to overinvest in defensive tackle. So Kenny Clark and Quinnen Williams in particular. And I say overinvest, I don't mean anything derogatory about that, but obviously you moved out the best edge rusher in the NFC in Micah Parsons to do something. Well, now we need a scheme that allows you to profit off that doing something, because you're not as good at the edge for now, probably ever. You're probably never going to get an edge like Micah Parsons or DeMarcus Ware in the near future, but you were willing to give that up in the idea of having a better defense. The object of the game is not to have the best defensive player, but the best defensive unit, and that's kind of the idea behind this whole thing, if we see it correctly.
And along with Christian Parker are guys who are young and on the downside are new to this, but you're talking about Scott Simons, who was a defensive coordinator at the collegiate ranks at SMU, moving across town. Mm-hmm. Ryan Smith, a respected defensive backs coach. Marcus Dixon, Robert Muschamp, who is just he's an assistant defensive line coach, but he comes from being around the game. He's been a young defensive coach now with the Chargers for the last few years, and I don't know these guys, but I do know that if you have a dude who has a vision and he puts people around them who believe in that vision and who are young and hungry. Yeah. A lot of times you can see good success. And again, I think this goes in line with, what kind of coaches do we want here? Well, you want some that players are going to listen to. And we may do even a complete Football Friends, at least half of it, on Brandon Jordan, a pass rush specialist who was hired, and he's not even listed in the defensive staff, but he could play a huge role on this team,
no doubt,
this year. And I don't have the totals, Bob, because we don't get these. I don't think, unless you do some really interesting investigation. But I want to say the Cowboys have invested in this defensive staff monetarily, maybe more than they ever have.
Well, I hope so, because that's their edge. With a cap system like we have, there's no reason for you to not build a awesome, highly coveted staff. And so, coaches do not go on your cap sheet, and given the profits, heck, maybe you'll have to thank the World Cup at some point, George, for building out your staff with all the profits from Egyptian soccer fans helped put together your defensive staff. Maybe.
Okay, whatever works.
But I guess what I'm saying though is, for all these years, for the Cowboys to be stagnant and not forward thinking, when putting together their staff, their brains, their front office, and everything, it is really missing your advantage. You have more revenues, and you can't spend it on players, so spend it everywhere else. So I don't know. I don't know what they had to give up to put the staff together, and maybe more importantly, we don't know if this is a good staff, but we do know it's a fresh staff built of hungry minds. And again, it's all built on, hey, they went and took a chance after 3 consecutive DCs who were former NFL head coaches, but were also our age or older, and they totally went the other direction, to where now their punter is older than their defensive coordinator. And that's crazy, but it's true. And Christian Parker has a chance to be great at the age of 34. And, his first real big responsibility you are in charge of our defense. And here's the crazy thing. He's so highly thought of. And by the way, so is Clayton Adams on the other side of the ball. They're so highly thought of as young, fresh minds that if you have a good season and you do end up in the Super Bowl, you could lose both coordinators.
They'd be gone. Yeah,
absolutely.
That'd be a good problem to have.
That's a great problem.
Losing both coordinators, that has not happened since the Cowboys used to go to Super Bowls. And there goes Norv Turner, and there goes Dave Wanstead. I think
that's an honor.
Probably the last time that happened. And as Barry Switzer used to say, it's about players. And you've added 6 new starters, at least 6 new starters. One of them is Caleb Downs, who we all just did cartwheels on draft day, the fact that the Cowboys got him. Jalen Thompson, I think, is a really good get in free agency. He's really going to help them. Rashawn Gary still has something left in the tank and is much better than anything else the Cowboys started at outside linebacker or edge last year.
People are going to like him.
D. Winters from San Francisco, I think, is going to be a really nice addition to this team. Ogbanya on the defensive line. It's just Otito. It's an overturn of your personnel, and it was certainly needed. It appears to be an upgrade, but you're right. Can they line up right? Can they communicate? Can they do all this? We'll find out when the bullets start flying. But man, I think it has the potential to be much, much better. And dare I say, pretty darn good in his first year as a defensive coordinator.
Well, they'll have to hit the ground running. There's no doubt about it. And part of it is going to be sorting out certain things like, who the heck are my cornerbacks? In fact, you know what? If you want to do our final segment on our biggest questions as we board the airplane for Oxnard,
I love it.
Let's wrap it up with that.
Okay, we'll do that next. Football Friends about to head to California for Cowboys training camp, and we always have questions. As optimistic, I think, as both of us are about this team, there are so many questions about this team. And I think the question outside the big defensive elephant that's in the room, we just talked about the defense, but I really think I'm not going to be too hyperbolic about this and say that it's the key position of this team and will determine the season. But, man, if Tyler Guyton hasn't improved to the point where he can hold it down at left tackle, we've got a story here, because you're going to have to juggle your offensive line. It still could be a good line if Tyler Smith moves out to left tackle and TJ Bass slides into left guard. But on the other side of that, what if he has crossed this line and he's much better and he can play left tackle at a really good level? All of a sudden, you're talking about an offense now in the second year of a scheme. Man, if you thought last year was good, this year could be really, really good.
Yeah, I think you hit on the talking point on offense is absolutely left tackle. Partly because, well, Nate Thomas was, I think a year ago, people were thinking, you know what, we hope Guyton's better, but if not, this Nate Thomas guy is pretty good.
Yep.
He had a good camp. I think he was decent in preseason, as I recall. A Johnny Cornelius was part of the class of 25. And between those two, they thought, well, maybe we have somebody who can push Tyler Guyton. It didn't happen. Nate Thomas played about 6 weeks. So let's go back to Guyton. Guyton started the season, like the first day we were at camp, George, we heard he was gone for the year with like an ACL. Do you remember that drill?
Yes, that's right.
Where
Yeah.
he got rolled up on? I think Rappaport even said he's done for the year. And then I remember like an hour later, Todd Archer's like, whoa, not quite. Let's, they're concerned, but they're going to go have his knee looked at. And apparently the ligaments were in place and it was more of like a sprain, and he would be back in 3 to 4 weeks or something like that. So Guyton played, and then I think maybe in the Green Bay game had a concussion. But then he came back from, I want to say, early October till the Eagles game, which was either Thanksgiving. No, it was the Sunday before Thanksgiving, as I recall. I thought Guyton played really well. I thought he really put 5 or 6 weeks together where, to me, that was the best version of Tyler Guyton we had ever seen. And then in the Eagles game, he got hurt again and was gone for the year. And I think that was maybe a high ankle sprain. I'm trying to keep all his injuries straight.
Yeah.
The point is, he gave me a window where it's like, whoa, okay, year 2 jump. Did the light go on? So you have 2 things going against Tyler Guyton right now. One is he's put some bad tape out there. And 2, he's constantly hurt, it seems like. And so if we can manage the hurt part to where he's out there for 2 or 3 or 4 straight months, then we can start thinking about, Duke Manyweather and Clayton Adams and all these guys really sharpening his technique, because his tools are great and it feels like his mentality isn't bad. That's the concern with Nathan Thomas, is when, was it Aiden Hutchinson? I forget who was working him over pretty good last December, but he lost confidence and he would get worse each week, because I think, almost like you and I stressing about a test tomorrow, he could feel Sunday getting closer and his confidence was getting worse each week, and just all these horrible things about how hard it is to be a professional athlete when you're getting pantsed on national TV. And so Guyton's a huge part of this, huge, because I do think you're right. And Shoddy's already setting the table for it. By the way, a little disingenuous from Shoddy saying, yeah, Tyler Smith playing at left tackle. That's just like Tyler Booker playing at center. No, it's not.
Yeah.
If Tyler Booker plays
that's an
at
emergency
center,
training thing.
yes. Tyler
for
Booker is like, running like a fire drill at school. Tyler Smith moving to left tackle is a legitimate fire. So let's not confuse fire drills with actual fires. And I think Tyler Smith almost expects it to be moved out there, and I don't think he loves it, but I also think he's a great dude and a great teammate and will do what he's asked. And TJ Bass, honestly, a lot of people will tell you he could start in the NFL right now, and he probably will be next year when he becomes a UFA. And so you do have 3 starting caliber guards, and you may only have 1 starting caliber tackle. So maybe getting your best 5 actually makes sense. But that's far and away your biggest question on offense. A couple smaller ones. Ryan Flanoy as your WR3, and maybe more importantly, the type of guy that you might need to play for 4 to 6 weeks if CD or George get hurt. Flanoy has proven that he's ready to take the next step, and I feel good about that. And then the other one, George, is Brevin Spanford, I think, is past Luke Schoonmaker on the depth chart to a point where if Schoonmaker gets flipped for a 5th or 6th, maybe we shouldn't be shocked. I don't know if you would trade your depth. The other flashing light for me on offense, other than the big one, which is if Dak gets hurt, would be what are we doing if Javonte Williams gets hurt, and how far is the drop to my second best running back?
I have Jaden Blue underlined. I think he
in
could
a good
be,
way or bad way.
Of a let's see way.
Okay.
Let's see as he made the jump. It's been reported that he and Schottenheimer had a real heart-to-heart after the season, and it was, hey, you've got the ability, and it was just a couple of carries in that Giants game, and that was such a weird game. And we saw flashes of this when he was at Texas. Man, he's got some juice, and he could really help this team. He didn't last year, but if something happens to Javonte, or how about just a changeup on 3rd down where you get it to him in the flat, and all of a sudden you've got a splash play that you didn't have last year. He could add another element to this team that we didn't see last year.
Oh, 100%. Now, that to me starts completely with, are you ready to be a pro? And that's the issue with Jaden Blue, is that they basically told us he was kind of used to being a college football player, and say what you want about the NFL, but there is an expectation level that you are where you are when you're supposed to be there, and that doesn't just mean showing up at meetings on time. That means knowing your assignment and carrying it out to the absolute maximum, because we don't have time to babysit you. You're being paid good money every week, and do you want to be an NFL player or don't you? And the details involved in being a good pro, a quote good pro, you wouldn't believe what those guys put in, the time and the effort and the focus, and it's possible Jaden Blue was treated like a 5-star at Texas, and those guys may not quite be asked to be as detail oriented as long as they're ready to be a star on Saturday. Well, the NFL's not like that, man. The NFL does not just say, well, we'll see you on game day. They need to know that you know everything. And so I don't mean to beat up on the guy, but when the coach tells us that they had a long heart-to-heart on why he wasn't playing much as a rookie, I take that to say, okay, well, you guys addressed what it means to be a professional football player, and hopefully Jaden Blue gets it. Now, even if he does, he's still tiny, and he can't do everything you need. And Phil Maffa is an option who's much bigger, and gosh, you just wish you could have like an all-purpose guy like Javonte, and that's why it's crazy, George. But we can't completely rule out Malik Davis, who every year he's on the list of guys that they're trying to replace, and every year we come back and we're like, yeah, I still think they need Malik Davis again.
Remember our week of highlights of Malik Davis special teams play?
Yeah.
If you could take that heart and put it in Jaden Blue.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
he's a pro.
Yeah,
yes.
He's terrific. And just the fact that you have a little bit of that expectation of what, hey, this is what we expect on this side of the ball. And yeah, Jaden Blue, I think, is really an interesting one. I'll give you one on defense that could be a jump out player this year, or he could just be a guy that maybe the Cowboys overvalued last year in the draft. We'll call him what Shotty calls him, Izzy. Donovan Izaraku, man, he could be a huge factor in this new system. I'm anxious to see what he can do this year.
Boy, me too. I think he's going to be great. I think he had a really good rookie season, and I think there's reason to believe that he's a better version of Malachi Lawrence in that, with Lawrence, you're looking at a guy who still has to get better at stopping the run. Whereas Ezeraku, I think they feel he's really where they want him to be in just about everything already, and the only big step they would need him to take is just to close more plays. Like, don't just be there. Now let's get the quarterback to the ground, or let's finish the play. And that's okay. He's in a great spot.
Yeah.
When they went and got Rashawn Gary, to me, that was kind of the end of chasing Max Crosby, because you're not going to pay Rashawn Gary $16 a year and then go get Crosby at $30 a year. And if you've already feel good about Ezeraku and Malachi Lawrence. So I do think that Max Crosby is not really a thing unless you can get them to like take Rashawn Gary back in the trade. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I don't think they're interested in doing that. So I agree with you on Ezeraku. The big questions for me on the defense, aside from all of the questions,
sure,
the biggest ones personnel wise though would definitely be the run and hit linebackers. We believe Overshown is your green dot guy, and D Winters is kind of your will, and then behind them Jay Sean Barham and I guess Curtis Robinson and Shamar James, who, by the way, did really well as a rookie. It's not his fault that
he was chasing players all over the field.
Yeah, and Shamar, I couldn't believe this, but he had the second most snaps of any linebacker last year, which when he was probably their 8th choice at linebacker, and just attrition and maybe incompetence from so many just kept pushing Shamar James onto the field. He was a 5th-round rookie, and he did really well, but I think they see him as a depth guy. But the point is, run and hit linebacker, we're totally trying new guys, and we know that D Winters was not their first choice. Their first choice was Nakobe Dean. They, I think, tried also, on Jordan Brooks, but Miami did not want to trade him, and they subsequently have given him a new contract. Then in the draft, they wanted C.J. Allen and maybe Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech. And so D. Winters was like, okay, all those guys are gone. Let's send a 5th to go get D. Winters, the TCU kid. And I'm here for it. Fred Warner, Fred Warner thinks very highly of him. Let's give it a shot. So linebacker, and then of course corner. Corner is anybody's guess. I don't hate what they have there, and I think it all has to be viewed with they're probably only going to have 2 corners on the field most of the time, because Caleb Downs is going to be the all-time nickel. So your 2 best corners, one of them has to be Deron Bland, or you've totally butchered a $95 million contract or whatever it was.
Yeah.
96. And then the other one, I assume, is Kobe Durant, who I really like with the Rams, an undersized dog, and then in a good way. And then Savon Ravel and Devin Moore are 2 extremely talented corners who both have to prove their health and quality at the NFL level. But I think both of them, their ceiling is above average starting corner in the NFL.
Yeah.
So they've actually stocked their cupboards pretty well, to a point where I don't really see how Kalen Carson can make the team, or your Josh Butlers or Trikweze Bridges and things of that nature. I mean, I think they wanted to improve the roster to where they were able to upgrade so many depth spots on this defense.
Well, Deron Bland's an interesting one. I couldn't believe what we were watching last year with him, and I think it was health related, and I also think it was belief related. I don't think he thought what they were doing was good, and I know he's a better player than what he showed last year, and maybe Christian Parker can bring out the best in him. And boy, that'd be a big one, a guy to jump up. But as we all know, defense is a collective thing. It's not as if we added 2 guys. It needs to be you've added 9 or 10 or 11 rotation guys, 6 starters, and they all do what they're supposed to do, and they're in the right spot. And I wouldn't be surprised if in September you have some bust and like, hey, what was that? But the key is, how do you start playing in November and December? And it's going to go fast, Bob. It's going to go real. Next thing you know, we're going to be talking about week 17. It's all starting now, but man, I can't wait to see this team.
No, me too. And there's so many pivotal players on this defense. DeMarvion Overshown. I think people are forgetting Quinnen Williams is an absolute superstar.
Yep.
And I understand. I mean, you saw half a season, you saw chaos, you saw a lame duck DC, and now they have decided to kind of build a scheme around Quinnen Williams, and I think that's delightful. And I expect he's going to have a year where people in Dallas are like, "Whoa, okay."
Yeah.
This guy's really, really good. And then, if Caleb Downs and Ezeraku are who we think they are, and, even Bland can return to a certain level and Overshown can stay on the field, okay, you got something. Because Rashawn Gary's very, very solid. Kenny Clark's very, very solid. Jalen Thompson, very, very solid. Kobe Durant, very, very solid. So what you've done is you've assembled some real, real strong NFL starters on a defense with a blank slate. So, from there, you can even say I've drafted a bunch of guys in Malachi Lawrence, Jay Sean Barham, LT Overton, and Devin Moore that I just think are going to be reserves for me as rookies. And you're like,
That's
wow,
yeah.
The Cowboys have drafted a first, a third, and 2 fourths that they don't have to start right away. This is the opposite of Shamar James' rookie year. So I know we have weeks and weeks to talk about this. We're teeming with hot takes and so forth, and that's only going to get better when we get out to the practice field. But yeah, optimism high. I'm not positive I'm going to put him in the Super Bowl, George, but I love where you're at, and maybe you can drag me there by Labor Day.
Well, maybe the best way for us to talk about this, Bob, and production work for Football Friends is maybe some time on the golf course in California. Maybe that would.
Yes.
Maybe that's what this needs.
We just have to hash things out over a few putts.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be great. All right, can't wait for training camp. Can't wait to see you there, Bob. Thanks to Peter Welton for producing us. We are off and running for the 2026-27 season of Football Friends. Yeah.